Hey guys, welcome to another exciting episode of Submission Radio. It's June 21st. I'm Dan Skradov and I'm here with Kasper Rizlowski.
Hey guys, we've got another big show for you today. We've got some big guests. We've got none other than Ultimate Fighter 17 winner Kelvin Gastelum. He's fighting in a week. We've got him on the show. We've got Big John McCarthy. He's been making the rounds recently. Obviously, a lot of people have been talking about him at UFC 174, so we got him on the show. We're going to be chatting to Big John. And then, of course, one of the biggest fighters in Australia in the UFC. We've obviously got Anthony Perosh, the Hippo. He's going to be on the show talking about his fight as well.
Yeah, that's right. The Hippo hasn't been interviewed very much on a lot of the shows, and this is going to be a different perspective, I think. So, guys, definitely stick around to listen to the Perosh interview. You're not going to regret it. And don't forget, Perosh is the man who took the Mirko Cryo Cup fight on short notice, for the fans, did it like a champ, and yeah, just a man's man. So excited to have him on the show.
Certified gangster just for doing that. Guys, as always, subscribe to the channel. There's plenty more interviews and content coming up. Check us out on Twitter at twitter.com/submissionaus. And of course, Facebook, Submission Radio AU.
That's right, guys. And don't forget, this week we've got a cool interview coming out with Robert Whittaker, another Aussie/New Zealander. And you got to have a look at us on camera this time around. So don't be too harsh with the comments. But yeah, definitely check out the interview. He's got the big fight coming up at UFC New Zealand. But yeah, without further ado, Cass, I think we're ready for the first guest.
All right, guys, our next guest is the winner of the Ultimate Fighter Season 17. He's currently in the UFC welterweight division, and he's none other than Kelvin Gastelum. Kelvin, welcome to Submission Radio.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Good to be here.
Thank you, and it's great to have you on the show. Now, just jumping straight into it, Kelvin, you've got a big fight coming up. I mean, in your last fight, let's talk about that. You had an absolute war against Rick Story. Would you say it was your toughest fight to date?
Right. That was a big fight for me. It's the biggest fight of my career so far. So, yeah, that was a big one for me.
Yeah, often with close fights, you never know what the judges will score the fight. How confident were you that your name was going to be announced as the winner for that one at the end of that fight?
Well, like you said, you never know with the judges, but I felt I had won the majority of the fight and won 2 out of the 3 rounds. So I was pretty confident.
And in that fight, we saw some really crisp, really improved and just great in general striking from yourself. Is that something that you're working on a lot and something that continuing to work on for your fight against Nico Masaki?
Right. Well, going into that fight, that was the first time I really felt all my skills were well harnessed together, like for the first time in my career. So. I'm just barely, I'm able to really put it all together real well, and I'm just improving, But boxing, I've been boxing for a while, so I was just able to display it more in this fight.
Now, Kelvin, for everybody listening at home, they might not realize this, but you're only 22 years old. You're a young man coming into the sport. You won the Ultimate Fighter at a very young age. Take us away from the fighting for a second and take us into your life. What's it like, being Kelvin Gastelum, and how did your life change after winning the Ultimate Fighter?
Yeah. Right. I wanted it, I was 21. I had barely turned 21 once the show started. I remember being 20 years old, working at an office and just working full time and just training whenever I could here and there, because I was actually thinking about quitting MMA for a little bit before I went on to the show. But I saw an ad. On the internet, Ultimate Fighter tryouts, and I was 20 at the time. So I called the producers and said, "Hey, my birthday is on this date. I turned 21 this date because you have to be 21 to be on the show." So I called them and said, "Hey, my birthday's on this date. Can I still come and try out?" And they said, "Well, the deadline is on your birthday, so go ahead and try out."
So yeah, it was a good thing you weren't born a day later, and a good thing a deadline wasn't a day later, because things could have been dramatically different. Now when you walked out of the house, did you notice a big change in just walking down the street, people recognizing you? You know, obviously it's a big change from, you know, like you said, working a job like that to all of a sudden becoming a public figure.
Right, yeah, absolutely. You know, you learn to deal with different scenarios. A lot of people coming up to me and asking for pictures and autographs and you know, etc. All the things that come with it, and it gets awkward at times. You know, random strangers coming up to you and kind of just talking to you. At first, you know, it's embarrassing, really. I was embarrassed, but no, you know, over time you get to learn how to deal with those scenarios and learn how to deal with people and just how they react. People, you know, some people get too excited. Some people, you know, are very nice and calm, cool, and collected. But it's definitely been life-changing for sure.
Now, MMA fans, obviously, you know, they're all around the world in every country. I mean, you get your different sorts from businessmen to street kids to pretty much everyone. What would you say has been the craziest fan interaction you've had so far?
The craziest fan? You know, nothing too crazy, to be honest, but I can't really think of any right now, to be honest. It's just you know, you run into people in the weirdest of places, even in public restrooms. You know, I'm at a restaurant and I'm at you know, I go to the restroom and the guy next to me in the stool starts talking to me like, "Hey, you're that guy." And I'm like, yeah, I'm that guy.
Which is funny because it's funny because it's like, how did he actually recognize you? You guys in a bathroom, you can probably only see your feet anyway.
Right. Right.
I was gonna ask you also, you know, like obviously being 22, winning the Ultimate Fighter. I mean, you're in the UFC. That's crazy. But you seem very grounded. You seem very focused. We don't see you on TMZ, you know, coming out of strip clubs or anything like that, or partying. We don't see you, you know, buying cars. I mean, is this the real you, or is there another side to Kelvin Gastelum that we just don't see?
No. I mean, you know, I like to have my share of fun, obviously, just like everybody else. But you know, I do keep myself real grounded and have people around me that really keep me grounded and support me 100%. So that's part of the reason why. And my mother, you know, she'll slap me around if she sees I get too. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, Kevin. You know, and you mentioned your support. You mentioned your mother, and you know, you spoke about it a little bit. You know, during your time on Tough, when you were competing, about how important it was winning the competition for your family. Can you tell us a little bit about how that's helped in your family life, and have you been able to give back a little bit to, you know, to your family and supporters?
Right, absolutely. You know, my mom was working, you know, two jobs before, and now I'm able to you know, support her, and she quit her job, so now she's kind of just relaxing at home, which is what I wanted. You know, I don't want her to be stressing out over money or anything like that. So she's living good, and she's, you know, very proud of what I've done. So, you know, I've been able to give back a little bit and give back to the community a little bit, you know.
That's awesome. That's really amazing that you've done that for your mum. And I wanted to ask you, obviously, you know, when you're a professional fighter, you're in the UFC, like you said, you almost quit MMA, and now you're in it. I mean, sometimes people have hard enough time focusing on their job or as a fighter, even when they're I don't know, like late into their 30s and things like that. You're obviously 22, want to go out and have fun. How difficult is it sometimes when, you know, you guys are like, oh, hey, we're hitting up the club, or we're doing this and that, and you're like, look, I'm training, I've kind of got, like, you know, a fight, this is going to earn me a world title one day? Right.
Well, you know, when it's time to train, it's time to train, and I have my share of fun and go out with my friends when I'm not in training, when I'm not in camp. But I've learned I've learned from wrestling. For many years, I've wrestled for many, many years. When it's time to train, it's time to train, and yeah, I just kind of have that mindset built on me, ever since I was younger. There's times to train, there's times to have fun, and I just know when to train and when not to. And I also have big goals, and a big vision that I want to accomplish. So, it's not going to get by, none of those accomplishments are going to get done by anybody else except by me, and I have to put in the work. So.
And yeah, speaking of those accomplishments, are you willing to share some of your master plans there and some of the goals that you've set for yourself, maybe for 2014 and just in general?
Right. Well, in 2013, Chris Weidman got the Breakthrough Fighter of the Year, and I want to be able to steal that title for 2014. I want to keep stacking those W's and keep moving up the ranks. And I've made it pretty clear. I want to head towards the top of the division. And that's just. That's just going to take that just takes one fight at a time. So that's what I'm working on.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, obviously, let's talk a little bit about your upcoming fight, your opponent, Nico Masoki. He doesn't exactly have the name power that you've now developed, but he is a dangerous prospect. He's had a couple of fights in the UFC. He's got a lot of finishes. How do you see the matchup?
Absolutely. He's been fighting a lot over in Europe, so he's not really well known over here in the United States. But yeah, he's looked great in his fights, and he's big, he's strong, coming down from middleweight. He kind of has that Uriah Hall, type of body frame. He's big, and so it's nothing I haven't seen before, but it's something that it's something to keep in mind, absolutely. And I just feel like he's kind of in the same position I was when I was fighting Rick Story. He's got everything to gain and nothing to lose from this fight.
Yeah, you're sort of coming from that, the young kid that's coming up, and now you've got, things to lose because you've obviously got a reputation. You're undefeated. Now he's only lost twice. What's the biggest thing to look out for Nico? What's the biggest thing where he's dangerous?
I've seen he's getting rocked. He's gotten rocked and dazed, and guys can't put him away. I saw in the Alessio Sakara fight, he came in looking for the kill and got too aggressive and just got a little carried away and got submitted. Alessio Sakara did. So I got to be smart and can't be too aggressive, can't be too confident coming into overconfident. Coming in with Nico, he's young and he's hungry and very dangerous anywhere the fight goes.
Absolutely. And I mean, we're about a week out from the fight. Tell us a little bit about how your preparations have gone and where are you at in your training camp right now? What are you guys doing right now? Are you wrapping up and just getting ready to fly over to the venue city and start preparing there? Right.
Yeah. This is my last week of training. I've got a heavy workout, the gauntlet, we call it the gauntlet, and that's just a workout I do every Friday to see where my conditioning is, and we push the pace in that workout, and we kind of just figure out how we're going to peak at the right moment. We figure out just where my conditioning is and where it needs to go and what adjustments we need to make. So today is that day, and then tomorrow is my last sparring session, and then we fly out to San Antonio, Texas.
Oh, awesome, awesome. And just speaking of, obviously being in the welterweight division, you were in the middleweight division before, and you've found a new home in the welterweight division. How are you finding the weight cut going down to welterweight? Isn't it easy weight cut for you, or is it something that you're still kind of getting down packed?
Yeah, I mean, it's just something I'm still trying to figure out. I think we've got a hold of it this time pretty well. This is my third time going down to welterweight, so it's relatively new still. And but we're getting used to we're figuring it out pretty much. And I think this time we got a real good hold of my weight and my diet. So it is kind of a good weight cut that I do. I get off season, I get up to 200, 205 pounds.
Wow.
So I do have to diet and really dial in that diet.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna ask you also, I know you've got Nico Masoki obviously this coming weekend. It's not really, it's never smart to look past anyone, but as a guy with goals, wanting to be that breakout fighter, a lot of fighters, they seem very content with letting the UFC choose their next opponents, but sometimes in a stacked division like welterweight, that can, sometimes calling somebody out can mean the difference between the next title shot and fighting on the undercard. I mean, we know you focus
Right.
on the fight with Nico. Who would you like to see? Assuming everything goes to plan and you beat Nico, what's another matchup that interests you in the welterweight division?
Yeah, like you said, I don't like to look past my opponents, but I can't help but be excited for that Mexico card coming up in November. Very excited for that. I'm very excited for that. I'm not looking past Nico at all, but I can't help but be excited for that Mexico card. That's when Cain Velasquez fights Fabricio Verdum. If everything goes as planned, I'm looking to fight someone in the top 10 that'll keep me moving up the ranks. I don't have a specific name, but somebody in the top 10 for sure.
That's right. No Conor McGregor style call outs, but definitely seems like you're looking there.
Yeah.
And when you mentioned this someday in the off season, you're around 205, there must be a voice in the back of your head sometimes saying, stuff it. I'm just gonna go fight in the light heavyweight division. Forget these weight cuts.
Yeah.
I could
Yeah,
do
you
it.
never know.
One of my questions is, obviously you like Ronda Rousey, and during the Ultimate Fighter, one of the highlights was when you got a chance to train with her. Let us tell us a little bit. Have you spoken to Ronda since? Have you had another chance to train with her? And what was it like training with her on the Ultimate Fighter? Was it a dream come true?
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, it was awesome. I was extremely ecstatic to have her there as a guest, and oh man, the guys were kind of busting my balls because because they knew I liked her, and they were kind of just and I had a girlfriend at the time, so I couldn't act too, I can't act too like I liked it too much, but inside I was screaming like a little girl. In my mind, I was like, oh my God, that's Ronda Rousey. But I had to keep it calm, cool, and collected for the cameras and for the guys that were trying to bust me. But it was definitely an experience, and she was great. She's she's a very nice girl, very humble as well, and it was great to meet her for the first time.
And
sorry, go Cash.
I was just gonna ask, did you train with her any time afterwards, or was it just a one-time thing?
Yeah. So after the show, I went out and lived in Irvine, California, with Uriah Hall for about 6 months.
Wow.
So I lived with him for about 6 months, and we trained together, and Rhonda, invited us out there to train with her as well. So I did get to train with her after the show.
And I just wanted to ask you living with Uriah Hall, I mean, how was that? Obviously, you beat him in the Ultimate Fighter finale, and then you guys living together. Obviously, Uriah Hall looks like, just the nicest guy ever. What was that like? What was the feeling there?
Oh, I think the feeling is mutual. I have a lot of love for the guy. He's almost like a brother now. We became really close friends after the show, and really, really, really respect the guy and love the guy to death. Yeah, I can't say enough good things about him. He's been a great guy, a great friend.
I guess one of the criticisms about Uriah Hall is just his self-confidence. It seems like he has issues with self-confidence sometimes, and is a great fighter, but sometimes mentally in a fight has some issues there. How's he coming along with that whole aspect? Have you had a chance to speak to him and see how he's coming along in that aspect?
Yeah, yeah. I spoke to him a couple weeks, about a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago. He's over in Oregon with Chael, and his coach is finishing up camp over there, and the reason why he does that is because those coaches really bring the best out of them, like they brought the best out of them on the show, and they really push them mentally and really bring that confidence in.
And obviously, speaking of Chael, I mean, I was going to say on the show, it really did seem like Chael, took you under his wing and, really helped you, gave you the nickname KG. What's something that you sort of learned about Chael that, we may not have seen?
Man, well, you guys saw the real Chael on The Ultimate Fighter. He was a great coach, great mentor, and really just a really nice guy to have around. Really encouraging, and it just kept us all intact mentally and physically. I don't know if the results would have been the same if I wouldn't have gone with Chael.
And did you get a chance to watch any of the Ultimate Fighter that he did in Brazil? The whole Vanderlei fight. Do you have any thoughts on that?
On the show or on the fight?
On the show. You know how they ended up getting in that fight, and it was
Right.
highly publicized. A couple of Vanderlei's coaches jumped in, punched him in the back of the head. It was quite a scene. What were you thinking when you saw that?
Oh man, I'm just thinking it's honestly it's ridiculous. I don't see Chael as a guy who would go and start fights. Obviously they don't like each other, but he wants to fight him, but not a street fight or not just in the middle of the gym. I don't see Chael pushing a fight in the middle of the gym. He's such a really nice guy, and I did not expect that at all.
Well, speaking of unexpected, I mean, just the other week, Chael announced his retirement from mixed martial arts. I mean, what was your thoughts when you first heard that?
I was pretty bummed out, pretty devastated. I mean, I think it's for he's probably made the best decision for himself. I know he's a very intelligent man, and he will make the best decision for his life and for his career, and I'm sure he's going to move on to bigger and better things. So, I'm happy for whatever decision he makes. Like I said, he knows what he's doing, and at this point of his career, he's doing bigger and better things.
Yeah, I definitely shed a tear when I heard Chael was retiring. So fingers crossed for this
Yeah.
Metaverse thing. So at least we could see him compete in something. Well, yeah, definitely one of the best personalities at MMA. Now, Calvin, we have a thing called the Submission Radio Tap Out Round. GQ magazine says it's one of the top 25 segments on radio in the world. It's possibly the sexiest segment in MMA. And basically what it is we throw a bunch of questions at you, and you give us the first thing that comes to your mind, very similar to a word association. Isn't that right, Cass?
That's exactly right. Are you ready, Calvin?
Okay.
Okay. It's just a bit of fun. So first question, name one movie you watch every time it's on TV.
Shoot, there's a lot of movies. Iron Man.
Okay.
What will your walkout song be on the 28th of June?
It's a Mexican song. It's called El Palenque.
Okay, I like the sound of that. But here at Submission Radio Music Department, we've come up with some other possible walkout songs to consider. Now, please choose your favorite out of the following. Number 1 is Scatman by Scatman Joe. Number 2 is I'm on a Boat by The Lonely Island. And number 3 is Katy Perry's inspirational smash hit, Roar.
Roar. I love that song.
I could just imagine you walking out to it as well. Now, Calvin, what's the first thing you're gonna eat after the weigh? And what's that food that you just can't say no to?
I can't say no to a good cheeseburger.
Us neither. Now, Kelvin, wanted to ask you, if you ended up leaving MMA, what would your job have been?
Besides MMA?
Yeah, like if you did take that break and if you did quit for a while, what would you have done for work?
Well, I would be going to school. Probably something in sports nutrition, physical therapy, something in that area.
You missed out on a lot of beer pong, my friend. Now, who is your MMA idol?
That would have to be George St. Pierre.
Oh, yeah. He's a great guy.
Awesome.
Great guy.
And we all miss him. And last of all, Kelvin, how do you plan on finishing or winning the fight against Nico Musaki on June 28th?
Hopefully it's at the first round and the first second with a big punch.
Well, could you imagine that? That just gives me shivers thinking
maybe if I
about it.
just look at him. Maybe if I just look at him and he just falls and taps.
Well,
Darth Vader style.
I was gonna say, yeah, you need to practice on your force work. Go train up in like Hoth or like Luke Skywalker. But guys, Kelvin Gastelum.
Right.
That's exactly right. Kelvin Gastelum, he's fighting Nick Musaki on June 28th, the UFC Fight Night, Swanson vs. Stevens in the co-main event. Check it out, guys. It's going to be a great fight, and you can follow Kelvin on Twitter at Kelvin Gastelum.
Kelvin, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to speaking to you after the fight and talking about you beating Nico with an eye submission, basically just looking at him across the ring and making him tap.
Yeah, that's the plan. No, thank you guys. It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Kelvin. Good luck in the fight and enjoy your post-fight cheeseburger.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
TJ Dillashaw. Don, I just want to say thanks to Mission Radio for having me on. It's been a good time. I can't wait to come back and do it again.
Our next guest is one of the best MMA referees in the sport. He has helped shape the sport as we know it today. Ladies and gentlemen, Big John McCarthy is in the house. John, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, well, it's a pleasure having you. First question off the bat, how's your health going? For everyone at home who don't know, you blew out your knee during the Verdun Brown fight. How's the knee feeling?
You know, it was blown out before, and that was just the tip of the iceberg as far as icing on the cake. That I had to do something, and I had it fixed. I had the meniscus, taken out where it was bad, and then I had my PCL was put back, and I'm doing good. I've been refereeing now for a couple of shows. I just did the UFC up in Vancouver. I have the Glory kickboxing tomorrow, so I'm back doing what I like to do.
Awesome. And we're happy to hear it. All the more showing the MMA, the most brutal sport, in the world. Now, talk us, how exactly did it happen? And what do the rules state, if a referee gets injured in the fight? What exactly is the protocol for something like that?
Well, I mean, if you got injured in the fight that you couldn't continue on or something happened, they would actually just bring in one of the other referees to take your place, and that's why we have multiple referees at a location. It has happened in the past. It's not something that happens very often, but we have had referees go down. We get referees that get knocked out. We have referees that hurt themselves, referees that get hit and get hurt by a fighter. So anything can happen. It's an active sport. We're close to guys that are really going after it and doing a lot of techniques, and sometimes those techniques come our way or we get in the way of them, or you can be an idiot like me and just take the wrong step and twist the wrong way and have your knee just pop. So
it's good to know that there's backup referees. Unfortunately for Bruce Buffer, when he injured himself, there was no backup announcer, so maybe he needs to think about that in the future as well. But now, John,
that was a funny thing.
No, so continue on. Sorry.
That happened at UFC 129, and he did that when actually announcing the fight that I did, Hominick and Jose Aldo.
Mm,
And I saw him take a funny step, and it was like, I think he hurt himself. And then when I went out, he had ice on his knees. He goes, I think I hurt my knee. And I actually, I've torn my knee 4 times. So I said, let me see, right? And I moved it, and I said, Bruce, I hate to tell you, I think you tore your ACL. So I felt bad for him.
Well, John, let's go back a little bit in time. I don't know if this is true or not, and please correct me if I'm wrong. But when you first wanted to get into MMA, you wanted to actually apparently compete in the UFCs, but Gracie advised against it. And because of your experience in law enforcement, you were seen as a fitting man to referee, and you debuted at UFC 2. Is that true? Did you actually want to compete in MMA?
Well, I mean, there's a lot that goes with that. I was working out with the Gracies before there was a UFC. I was one of their students. I enjoyed jiu-jitsu. I enjoyed what was at the time, we called Valley Tudo. As far as fights, we did those in the gym. We did them in gymnasiums when there was a martial arts tournament, things like that. Mm-hmm. And I had, I just enjoyed fighting. And then when the UFC came around, I was Royce's sparring partner for the first one. I didn't even think about it. They had actually had a form for you to fill out to be a participant in. So I filled out one of the forms, and it wasn't that I was trying to go against, Royce or anything like that. He was my friend. It was, I just wanted to, compete, see what it was, see how I could do, and didn't even think about the fact that, well, Royce was, the star now, and they would want him back. And so Jorge got a hold of it, and he looked and said, what are you doing? I didn't look at it. I didn't mean it that way. This is what I was thinking, and obviously I would never want to fight, someone that's from your school. So, or Royce. So it was a quick thing, and it was no big deal. And he gave me the greatest gift I could have gotten in being a referee, because I've been able to, stay with the sport for way, way longer than I ever would have if I had fought. So what Jorge did for me by, giving me the position of a referee was the best.
And obviously, you've had a long career, in mixed martial arts. You probably would have seen a lot of careers come and go, guys come and go. Did you at any point have that itch later on, maybe after the first few UFCs, to go and have a few fights anywhere else?
You know what? I didn't even have that choice. It was a matter of pretty quick. Semaphore Entertainment Group, who was in the beginning, they were kind of like the half owners of the UFC. Mm-hmm. You had Wow Promotions, which was Horian and Art Davey on one side and Semaphore on the other. They put me on a contract where they basically owned me. So I couldn't go and work another show. It was I couldn't fight, I couldn't do anything. They were trying to control, their show and everything, and I understand why they did it. It was never even a thing that I even thought of after that point.
I see a dream match that could have happened a while back when Herb Dean was fighting. Sort of the best refs in the world. I could see that headlining any card anywhere in the country, any country in the world. But an opportunity missed. Now, John, obviously there's been some dodgy decisions happening all over the place. One of the dodgiest was the Diego Sanchez versus Ross Pearson fight. Did you watch the fight, and what were your thoughts on the judge's decision in that fight?
Yeah, I did watch the fight. What's funny is I was actually I was supposed to be at that event, but I had to turn it down because I had previously committed to teaching up in Vancouver before their show. And one of the things I was teaching was judging, and it just so happened that one of the first fights that I showed just one round of a fight that Diego Sanchez was in with Gil Melendez. And, that's how I started the class off. And then I went into showing other fights with Diego because I was trying to show them that, look, because a fighter is aggressive and because he's coming forward is not, grounds for giving him around. It's what lands and what is effective in the fight. If a guy is coming forward and he's getting his butt kicked, he's not being effective, and his opponent needs to win the round. And then they watched, while we were doing the class, that fight comes on, and we watch it, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, it's just what you said," and it happens, and it's, judges can get sucked in by antics, they can get sucked in by someone's persona and the way that they go about acting like something doesn't hurt. It doesn't matter if they act like it doesn't hurt. It's, did it affect them? Did it land? Was it a clean blow? And is that person landing cleaner blows in the fight? It's not so much that you have to land the most. A lot of times we get these punch stats where they'll say, well, this fighter landed more punches. That doesn't matter. It's the punches that land and what power and effect is on them is what we look at as a judge. And honestly, in that fight, in my opinion, it wasn't a good decision. I thought Marcos Rosales, who is, someone that I work with a lot here in California, I thought he had the right score. I thought that Ross Pearson won every round. I didn't think it was that hard of a fight to score, but unfortunately, those things happen. I think the UFC took care of it in the proper way. They, gave Ross Pearson his win bonus.
Yeah.
And basically looked at it in a fashion that, we're not going to say that that was a loss. You're just going to, move on like you had won that fight. Now, that's not saying anything against Diego, and a lot of people will sit there and say, well, you're putting Diego down. I'm not putting Diego down at all. And, at the time, Diego thinks he won the fight because he's fighting hard, and he doesn't know everything that's going on in a fashion that, someone that's watching it does. But if you go back and watch the fight, Ross Pearson did what he was supposed to do. He won the fight.
I would agree with that. And yeah, I mean, Diego's an amazing fighter as well, so definitely nothing against him. But I think, yeah, like in that sense, like, go on.
Diego is one of the, if there's a guy that you're going to spend your money on to watch fight because you want to be entertained, you can't go wrong with Diego Sanchez because he's going to come to fight. He's going to fight as hard as he can. He's going to, put on a battle. And, sometimes to the detriment of his health, he's putting on a battle, but he absolutely is a fighter and a warrior from the top of his head to the toes on his feet.
And I think, fight fans at the end of the day, that's what they love about MMA. And a lot of them do get upset when you have, judges' scorecards getting read out, things like that. I mean, we were in Australia, and there was, I think, it was Mighty Mouse against Ian McCall, and it was announced a draw when it was basically just incorrectly tallied up. It was just basically maths. What would you say? Like, obviously, your style of explaining fights and judging it seems so simple and easy to grasp. What do you do from here as far as like MMA judging? What do you think would be the best course of action to take to sort of educate judges?
Well, I honestly believe that the judging criteria itself needs to change. And, the criteria that we use, what's established under the unified rules, is the criteria for a judge, is something that I wrote with Jeff Blatnick back in 1998, 99. And it's antiquated. It's wrong. It was at a time when the sport was young and had a lot of political pressure against it. We had to use things, saying, effective grappling, effective striking. Let's be honest. Fighting is about damage. Fighting is about diminishing your opponent. When I say diminishing, I'm not saying that you're trying to, permanently damage them, permanently injure them. That's not what it is. What you're trying to do is within those, 3 5-minute or 5 5-minute rounds, you're attempting to do things that diminish his abilities, diminish his spirit, diminish his energy, diminish his capabilities of being offensively effective in doing those same things back to you. That's your job. Damage is part of our sport. It's a violent sport. There's no other way to look at it. And we do damage people as far as their effectiveness in time through that round. And the most important thing that we have to go on is how much damage did the fighter do? And look at which fighter was actually trying to end the fight. Not so much lay on someone and be on top. Were they working in the positions that they were at, being standing up or on the ground? Were they doing things to actually attempt to bring an end to the fight? Or were they trying to stall the fight? If they're trying to stall the fight, that needs to work as you're not going to get any credit at all for that in the fight. Where right now it's effective grappling. Shouldn't be worth anything. So the criteria for judging is the first thing that I would personally change. It needs to change. It would help the judges. And the other thing that needs to change is we have way too much variance between a 10-9 and a 10-8 round. That needs to change. we need to make a 10-9 round. What it is, what it should be, is a very close round. That's what it says in the ABC as far as the unified rules right now. They talk about a 10-9 is a extremely close round. Great, let's keep it that way. But a 10-8 round needs to be the round where it's easy to say fighter A beat fighter B in this round. No problem. Give them 10-8. And then when we start talking about guys that are doing big damage and domination in the fight, like we get some 10-8s now, that's now a 10-7 round, because that's going to open up the scoring and make it more appropriate. When you have a fight like Johnny Hendricks against George St. Pierre, the problem with the fight is that when Johnny Hendricks won a round, he won it in a dominant fashion. When George won a round, he barely squeaked by, but they're getting the same score. You're not watching a fight that's even, but now on the judges' scorecards, we have 2 rounds gone by, and it's even on their scorecards when it hasn't been an even fight, and we need to figure out a way to be able to account for the differences in those rounds.
That's very interesting, and actually a lot of what you're saying makes a lot of sense and does seem like it did to make judging easier in terms of, like, reading the scorecards out. I was going to say, so let's take an example. Obviously, Rory McDonald and Tyron Woodley, 2 fantastic welterweights. Rory really put on a clinic, and I'd say he dominated every round. So would that be an example of, say, a 10-8 round for Rory in most of those rounds?
Yeah, you could say, when you're looking at, if you wanted to change that over and get all judges to start doing the same thing, when you have a round where someone is absolutely controlling all the action, it's easy. There's not even a question about who won the round. You can look at the first round and say, that was a 10-9 round. Tyrone landed some stuff he didn't land near as effectively as Rory, and Rory should have won that. You can say that's 10-9. But you can go to that third round, it's not even close. There's hardly any offensive output after the first minute by Tyrone. He goes after Rory. He starts getting hit again. He starts going back almost into a defensive shell because he can't figure out what Rory's doing. And by the end, Rory is just beating him up. And so you look at that, it's like there's not even a doubt in your mind who wins the round, but that would be a 10-8 because it's showing that there was a separation in that fight as far as, that wasn't same as the first round. There was a difference between that first and that third round, and we need to show a separation of it somehow, because right now on the judges' scorecards, both of them are 10-9s.
This is very insightful stuff, John. I think you're, making a lot of people, a whole audience, understand a different side of MMA that they might have not understood before. And I'm just curious your thoughts on Jason High. Obviously, he shoved a referee. He received a year's suspension. He got fired from the UFC. What are your thoughts on his punishment? Do you think it was a fitting punishment? And does some kind of rules have to come into play if you do touch a referee, if you do put your hands on a referee, and should there be varying degrees of punishment?
Yeah, absolutely there has to be varying degrees of punishment, but it has to be a punishment that is, it evenly matches the crime. And the crime was pretty minimal. What you have to understand in that moment with Jason High, Kevin Mulhall did nothing wrong. He stopped the fight because he felt that Jason was not, intelligent in defending himself at that point. He stops the fight. And Jason was, he's in trouble in that fight, let's be honest. But Jason has a lot riding on that fight. He has dropped down to a new weight class. He wants to prove himself in that. And so that moment of frustration, he puts his hands and he pushes Mulhall. That's wrong. He should never do that. It's absolutely, as a referee, as someone that teaches referees all over, I tell guys all the time, look, none of you have, any more pride than me, but I'm telling you, you cannot put your hands on a fighter in a situation where they push you. And I've been pushed, and it's a matter of you want to, you get mad quickly. But first off, you're not the fighter, they're the fighter. Second off, you need to understand the situation behind it. Now, if a fighter came after you and was, absolutely trying to hurt you, you have the right to defend yourself. But what happened with Jason is not that. Jason put his hands on Kevin and kind of pushed him away. It was wrong. To be taken out of the UFC, I understand what Dana White is doing, and I'm not saying, Dana is, he's slamming his foot down, showing people, don't do that. You're embarrassing me. You're embarrassing my promotion. You're embarrassing the sport. I can't have that. Now, the question is, if Jon Jones had done the same thing, would he have kicked Jon Jones out of the UFC? He wouldn't have. Now, and I understand why. I'm not saying that he should, but Jason got, he got punished in a harsh fashion. Now, on top of, Dana, removing him from the UFC, the New Mexico State Athletic Commission has, suspended him for 1 year. That's 1 year of time that he cannot make a living fighting. That's a lot. You're having people take away your ability to make a living based on one act that, it's kind of head up butt, but there's emotion behind it. And sometimes we as human beings, we do things off of emotion that we normally wouldn't do. So do I think he should have been punished? Yes. He should have had his hand slapped. He should have gotten, a 5-month suspension. He should have been fined, we'll say $2,500, $5,000. That's going to hurt him. He's going to feel it. But I think that overall, Jason got treated very harshly for what happened.
Very interesting, very interesting. And I was going to say, you mentioned Jon Jones there. Another thing that a lot of people have, commented on is Jon Jones. He uses that old school Muay Thai stance where he has his hands out. He's got a very long reach. He has the palms open and the fingers open. I know in the Glover fight, he caught Glover in the eyes a few times. What exactly are the rules just to make it clear for everyone, as far as eye pokes and having your palms open, what exactly are the rules? And at what point do you have to take away a point?
Well, it's funny. You get a lot of people that are, they're very mad about Jon Jones and eye pokes. They feel that he is a dirty fighter. And Jon Jones is not a dirty fighter.
Mm-mm.
What is funny is that you'll get fans saying, why are you not doing anything about that? Well, the reason I'm not, any referee is not doing anything, there's no rule against what he's doing. As a matter of, there's no rule that says a fighter cannot have an open hand that's extended towards their opponent. Now, I'm not telling you I like it. I don't like it. I think it needs to be changed. In California, in the amateurs, I wrote a rule about if you have an open hand, your arm must be at close to a 90, meaning a 90-degree bend at your elbow, and you can have an open hand to parry. But even when we parry, we don't parry with open fingers. Our fingers are kind of close together.
Mm-mm.
So if you, in an offensive fashion, you are not allowed to put your hand out with your fingers extended. In a defensive fashion, you can. And the reason you can is because it's almost instinctive. And as people are moving away, they'll put their hands out in an instinctive fashion. So that would still be legal. But right now, an MMA referee in a fight with, Jon Jones or anybody else, I had a fight last night that I did. That there's a kid who's very similar to Jon Jones. He's got a body type that's very similar to him. He fights in a similar fashion, and he sits there and always has open hands. And the opponent that he was facing actually stuck him, 3 times in the eye, and it's because of this open hand issue. So there's nothing that we can do with the open hand. I will tell someone like Jon, hey, close your hand when it comes out, and I'm going to tell him what I'm doing is I'm setting up the possibility of me taking a point off of his scorecard if that eye poke occurs, because that's when we can do something. When the finger goes in the eye, there is a rule, no eye gouging. We can do something about that, foul at that time. Now, most of the time it's done in a defensive action, meaning Jon is backing up. He's got his hand extended, and the offensive actions of his opponent coming forward, his finger goes in their eye. Is it intentional? It's not intentional. Now, it doesn't mean that it doesn't affect the fighter, and if it affects the fighter in a really bad way, then we might take a point to try to even that fight out. But until they change the rules and say you're not allowed to extend your hand in an open fashion in any offensive situation, now, if they put that rule in and Jon does it, we as a referee can sit there and say, Jon, close your hand now. And I'm warning you, if you put it out there in that same fashion, I'm going to start taking points. We can start taking points from them. But right now, with what we have, there's no rule for me to take anything off of what Jon Jones is doing.
Great, some great points there, John. One of the things I wanted to get your opinion on was basically this whole TRT situation where the commission banned the TRT, and obviously Chael got caught taking some substances that he didn't disclose that may have been necessary for him at this point in his life. What were your thoughts on the way the commission went about sort of getting rid of TRT from MMA? Do you think there should have been some extra steps involved for fighters who have been on TRT for such a long time?
Well, when you say extra steps involved, I think the commission did exactly what it needed to do. They got rid of something that is a problem. I want you to just basically think about this. How could it be good that a state athletic commission is allowing one fighter to take a performance-enhancing drug, no matter what you want to say? When he's taking testosterone, it's a performance-enhancing drug. They're giving the ability for one fighter to take it while they're telling another fighter, no, you can't. How can that be good? It can't. It's a bad situation. It's a bad situation for the commissions. It's bad for the promotions. It's bad for the fighters overall. So finally, the commission said, that's it. No more TRT. And they're right for doing it. Because when you're looking at this, when fighters are saying, I have low testosterone, well, there's a reason you have low testosterone. Now, I'm not saying the reason is because you were taking something to begin with. It can be that, but it can also be because, through studies, we've learned that people that end up, having active lifestyles and especially in the fighting forms, get punched in the head and suffer certain types of, concussions and trauma due to head blows. We have them starting to lose production of testosterone in their system. So it can absolutely come about that a fighter has low testosterone based upon, the fact that they've been punched in the head quite a few times. And that's, a selection process when you look at it is telling you maybe you're getting close to the end of your career. And if you're 30 some years old and you're fighting and you have low testosterone, you have a choice. Don't fight or fight with what you got. But you can't put anything added into the mix. You do that and you have the blessing of the State Athletic Commission, only bad things are going to occur from it. And the Athletic Commission, Nevada being the first, Nevada did a great job by saying, nope, we're not going to allow this anymore. And you saw rapidly many of the other state athletic commissions followed suit, which was the right thing to do.
I would definitely agree with that. Now, John, I also wanted to ask you, just quickly going back to as far as judging and things like that, some of the other options that have been suggested is that a lot of the sort of judges should be guys that are ex-fighters, maybe sort of to give them more understanding. What do you think about a suggestion like that? And do you think there'd be any kind of issues with maybe having ex-fighters as the judges?
You know what? I hear it all the time, and it's so funny because I've trained a lot of ex-UFC fighters, ex-fighters from other promotions and things to be officials, to be judges, and to be referees. And it's funny that I get a lot of guys that are talented at what they do. Excuse me. They can be black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and they become very selective in what they want to give credit to. Because if an athlete doesn't perform it the way they would do it or the way they would teach it, they look and say, no, it wasn't done right. It's sloppy. And you look and you go, I'm not asking if it was sloppy or was it effective. Doesn't matter. It was sloppy. And so you'll actually get them being hard on fighters and not giving credit for things that they should. Do you have to be involved in this sport in some fashion to be a judge or referee? Absolutely. No doubt about it. You cannot come from boxing or anything else and understand MMA the way you need to without being involved in it. Do you have to be a fighter? No. You can be a person that, goes to the gym all the time, trains, works out, does Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, does wrestling, understands all the different types of takedowns we have, what all the different submissions are, understands the pressures that are involved in it, where the pressure is on the submission hold, all of these things. That's what we're looking for out of a judge. If we took and made all fighters judges, we would still get some bad decisions because people aren't going to be happy with, all decisions. They're not going to be happy with what happens, even if it's fighters that are the judges that are doing it. So the whole thing we need to do is we need to help our judges by, again, changing the criteria and changing the point structure as far as what we're going to say is a 10-9, a 10-8, a 10-7, down to a 10-6. Because the more points that we bring into this equation, because right now we don't use 10-10, we use 10-9 and sometimes 10-8 to score fights. We really have two different points, that we're going off of, where if we end up having 4, it's doubling the amount. That's going to show some difference in the fight. That's our best bet. Training of our officials is absolutely key. We've got to have people that understand every element of the fight. If you have somebody sitting watching a fight in a judge's chair that does not understand the technique that a fighter is using to bring the fight into a certain position, then we've got a problem that fighter is not going to get the credit they deserve based upon someone not knowing what they should know.
And I'm just curious, John, just sort of, from my own curiosity, not that I would be a judge or anything like that, but what exactly is the process for becoming, say, an MMA judge? Do you like, as far as your background, and what exactly do you need? Hypothetically, if Dennis and I want to become judges, what steps would we have to take?
Well, I'll break this into 2 parts. What process you need to start to take is you need to start becoming part of the sport. You need to then go to a certification course or school that's going to end up giving you a head start above everyone else by giving you some of the shortcuts of, no, you need to look at it this way. And someone that's teaching you, like I teach people, that's going to be your head start into it. If you can pass the course, when I put on a course, normally, if I do a referee's course, I get about a 90% fail rate. Not pass rate, fail rate. I pass about 10% of the people that ever take my course. In judging, it's about 30%. So, because it's a little bit easier, and it's not easier, there's just less to do. So, when you look at it, that's your start. But what I want you to think about is this. It's no different, obviously you're in Australia, I'm in the U.S., and normally I use things like the NFL, the NHL, the NBA, Major League Baseball to equate this. But it's the same thing in Australia when you look at, some of the footy leagues that you have, or the Australian rules football. You have officials that are out there on that pitch that are, doing their job and spent how long to get there. Because here's the difference with, we'll say, a footy match or an Australian rules football. They start off where? Well, they start off with the little kids. And then they move from the kids into the schools. And then from the schools, when they, done that long enough, they move into the club teams that are, really high. And then if there's colleges that are competing, they go to the colleges. And after about 15 years, they make it to the professionals. The problem with MMA and boxing is we get a lot of people who say, I can do that. And as soon as they take a course and pass a course, they say, put me in, coach, I'm ready. Well, they're not even close to being ready. They need to do all of these fights, amateur fights, for a while. Then getting into if they get into the professionals, they need to work the small the small shows with 3-round fights, 4-round boxing matches. Those are the things that you learn, and you get used to seeing things, and you learn how to do things. And even if you're not the one judging the fight or reffing it, if you're at the shows, you're learning because you're going to see things. Last night, I had a fighter in the middle of the fight, he throws up. Well, I know what to do. The fight's over. Boom, we get him out of there. And I had referees there that said, okay, and they start asking me questions, and you explain it to them. Now, because they were there, they learn how to do it. But it takes years of experience to be able to be smooth in getting yourself through problems that can occur within a fight. Because when you don't take that time and you haven't learned what you need, and you put yourself into one of those big shows because the athletic commission decides, well, we like him and we're going to put him in, even though they're not ready, as soon as something bad happens, the world falls down upon them because the pressure kills them, and everyone starts eating them alive for making a bad mistake, and a lot of guys never recover from it. So we need to always look at, yes, there's training that needs to be done, but there's a process of time and going over and over fights and doing shows one after the other that gets you that experience that's going to make you effective when you do the big fights.
Some great points made there, John. Now we've got some fan questions for you. We opened up the floodgates, and a lot of people wanted to pick Big John McCarthy's brain and ask him some questions. So I've got a question here from Strikes Again. He asks, do you have any stories about fighters getting mad at you after fights? Did anyone ever confront you backstage about a stoppage or anything like that during your reffing career?
No, not backstage, no. There's always going to be people that, want things a certain way. What's going to benefit their fighter is what they're looking for, and they don't think that you benefited. A referee's job is not to benefit one fighter over the other. What happens with fighters is fighters many times, they'll get knocked out. Well, when you knock out a fighter, that's a moment of time in their life that is gone forever because they don't know what happened. And then if many times they'll actually get hit and they get knocked back in, and you're stopping the fight, and they're like, no, I'm fine. And you go, yeah, you're fine because you got hit again. You were out. You know why I wasn't? All you say is, watch the tape. And, they're mad at you. And then they'll watch the tape and they'll go, I had no idea. It's like, it's no problem. It's okay, man. It happens. And so there's things that occur where a fighter's going to get mad because he doesn't even know what really occurred. I've had fighters get knocked out. One of my favorites is I had a fighter that was knocked out in the first 7 seconds of a fight. He comes out, they touch gloves, and this opponent hits him with a right hand that sends him backwards. He is stiff going back. He hits the ground, and he's out for probably a minute and a half. He was out a long time. It started to get a little scary there. And by the time they got him up, there was 5 minutes that had gone by. We had actually, called the winner. The other guy sitting there, he's got his hat on, his shirt on, and everything. Finally, we get this guy on a stool, and by that time, he's really started to come back into being who he is. And he's sitting there, and he stands up, and he's like, when is everyone get out of this ring so we can have this fight? And his corner goes, dude, the fight's over. He goes, no, I did not fight. I did not fight. And, in his mind, he didn't fight because all of that memory got knocked away. So it happens, Guys are going to lose moments of time of their life that they'll never get back.
That's crazy. Well, I guess that's what's going to make this question interesting. Bob Gray, he wants to know, are you against knees to the head of a grounded opponent, or are you for them, or what do you think the odds are of them ever being allowed in the UFC?
No, I'm not against them at all. I think it's an actual good aspect of the sport. I think fighters are smart people. Look at you. When you know something can't be done, you put yourself in certain situations. When you know it can be done, you don't put yourself in those situations and you protect yourself. So if they brought back knees to the head of a grounded opponent, are fighters going to just, be getting knocked out from knees? No, they're not going to put themselves in bad situations. But I do not see that rule ever changing. And the reason why is, after all this time within the unified rules, we've got, basically 15 years of a pretty successful safety record of fighters being in fights, and those rules, allowing fighters to compete and no one getting seriously hurt. So now you're not going to see athletic commissions saying, okay, we'll put knees to the head of a grounded fighter. One guy gets hurt, he goes and he's going to sue and say, well, you guys made it unsafe for me by saying that he can knee me to the head. You're not going to see athletic commissions doing it. It's not going to come back.
Now, John, Peaksmaker Joe would like to know, do the commissions take the referee's size into account when assigning fights?
There are some that do and other ones don't. There are ones that will sit there and say, I'm giving you the heavyweights because these guys are big. And then you'll see, an athletic commission put a guy who's 35 pounds soaking wet in with two guys that are 265 pounds. And they say, well, you're all the same. They're wrong. We're not all the same. We're all different. There's times that you want to, put guys in with, size-wise that are going to be easier for one guy to handle over the other. There's times when, promoters will sit there and, if a promoter's got, two flyweights, 225-pound guys, they don't want Jon McCarthy being the referee because then people look and say that those guys are small, they're midgets, and it's not. But I make them look small compared to if it was a smaller referee in there, they're going to look average like everybody else. And it's, to the fans' eyes, it's a better view. So there's times when, you got to look at the size of your referee, the size of your fighters, and make appropriate decisions.
Good point. Now, John, we're going to do something. We're sort of coming towards the end of the interview, but we're going to have a bit of fun. It's called the Submission Radio Tap Out Round. We'll basically fire off a bunch of questions at you. It's kind of like word association. You want to sort of answer those with the first thing that comes to your mind. Are you ready?
I'm in trouble.
All right, first question. When will we see Big John with no goatee?
Never.
Why isn't Big John McCarthy a part of the EA UFC game?
Wasn't asked.
Unbelievable. I would have wanted you as a playable character.
John, what is the most frustrating thing about refereeing MMA?
God, nothing. It's awesome.
Who was the first person to put big in front of your name? Obviously, you're a big guy, but who was the first person that kind of started calling you Big John McCarthy?
My mom used to call me Big John when I was a kid, but Art Davie is the one that started saying it at the UFC, and he's the one that popularized it.
Nice. What are John McCarthy's hobbies?
Oh, my God. Anything that has excitement in it. I've been down, I like paddleboarding, surfing, wakeboarding, anything with water, it seems like. I like diving with great white sharks. I've done that down in Australia. That's awesome. Anything that gets your heart going is awesome for me. Fast cars, fast motorcycles.
Nice.
Take us into the preparation you go through before a big UFC event.
The day of the show, I'm normally at the fights. If the fights are good, we'll say the first fight's at 5 o'clock. I will be usually at the arena around 2 o'clock. And that's just to get, myself set, get everything in place. We go and, we talk, we go out, we check the cage, make sure that everything is right. We check everything as far as talking with the doctors, talking with the inspectors and letting them know, what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. Then we have the fighters start to get there. We get our assignments of who we're working with, and we go in the back and start talking with all the fighters and making sure they understand. That's, not so much the rules. When you sit there and people go, are you talking about rules? You're talking about the bout conduct. You're talking about what you're going to do, what you're going to say, why you're going to say it at this point, what it means to the fighter, what they need to do to respond to it in the correct fashion. Those are the types of things that we're going over so they understand it. And then it's fight time. You're going out there and you're having a ball.
Now, John, what was it like being a police officer by day and an MMA referee by night during the first year in MMA? Did you feel kind of like Batman?
No, I never felt like Batman. I wish I did. I'd love to be Batman. You know what? It was. I loved being a LAPD police officer when I was, and I had a ball doing it. And then when the UFC started, I didn't even think anything about it. It was just something that I would go to and do, and then I'd come back and go to work. And it was not until people started noticing me that I thought it was kind of strange, because all of a sudden they would sit there and go, "Hey, I watched, you're that guy," and then it became a little bit of a problem. But overall, it was fun doing both.
If you could change one rule in MMA right now without having to think twice about it, off the top of your head, what would it be?
Downward pointed elbow strikes. Get rid of it. It's useless.
Yeah, I think we'd all agree. Now, John, what's the strangest fan interaction you've had? And you mentioned, obviously, people started recognizing you, so hopefully there's one while you were a police officer.
Oh, my God. I've had fans do some crazy things with me. Usually, the funny ones is when you're at a show or something and you're getting some, good-looking girls, and they'll want an autograph, and they'll want it on a certain part of their body, and sometimes that's a good thing because you got to hold on to that part to sign it for quite a while.
And maybe sign it twice.
There you go.
I wish I had that excuse when my girlfriend asks me about signing random parts of people's bodies. She's like, they don't even know who you are. But anyway, John, do you
That's
think
exactly the truth, too.
I'll be like, well, John McCarthy does it. No, John, do you think a day will come where MMA referees may have sponsors on their shirts? Just a strange question there.
No, I do not. It's not going to happen. Yeah, I used to do that, and I didn't do it in the fashion that I was making money to help guys out. When Tap Out was first coming around, I was friends with Charles and Dan, and they were, two guys that were struggling. And so I told him, here, give me a patch and I'll put it on my shirt. And I started putting on my shirt, put it on my pants, and stuff. And with being Charles, the way he was, all of a sudden he'd come out with a patch. It would be all the way across my back. It was crazy. But, yeah, I did do it for a while to try to help them and try to help them expand, their business and stuff. I didn't get paid for it, and it was something that even then, because the athletic commission is really starting to come in about that point, they were like, no, you don't put anything on your clothes and stuff. I don't think you're ever going to see any referee sponsored in a fashion where they actually wear a logo that they are making money off of that product in the ring. I don't see it happening.
Okay. Now, John, wanted to ask you, obviously your signature catchphrase, "Let's get it on," has become a staple of MMA. Now, the Submission Radio marketing team has come up with some suggestions for your new catchphrase to initiate fights. You got to pick the one that you like the most. Are you ready?
Let's hear it.
All right, so the first one is, "Let battle commence." And a British accent wouldn't hurt either.
Let the battle commence.
Yeah. The second one is "Just scrap." It's a little bit more laid back.
That's a Hawaiian term.
Yeah, there you go. And then the third one, in your best Arnold Schwarzenegger impression, at every fight you would go, "Come on, do it now, do it.
Do it. Do it now."
I think it's the last one. I think
Arnold wins.
Yeah, I think
I'll go with the Arnold one.
And finally, John, when is Big John McCarthy coming down to Australia to teach some Aussies how to judge and ref MMA?
Man, you know what? I don't have anything set up right now, but I would love to come there. I've done a couple of things in Australia. I have Steve Percival, who's down in Australia there, is a great guy who I taught, and he's done a great job in not only officiating, but in helping, teach other guys and getting, a great organization open there and stuff. And I don't know if Australia needs me, but anytime that anyone wanted anything done there, I'm open to coming. That's a great trip. I would love to come down to Australia. I got friends there that I'd like to see, so just give me the opportunity.
Well, John, you've taught us a lot on this show. Hopefully you've taught all the fans as well. You're an eloquent guy. And everyone, check out John's school at BJMUTA. That's bjmuta.com. And, of course, the referee school, www.mmareferee.com. And check out Big John McCarthy on Twitter, Jon McCarthy MMA. John, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much.
Hey, I appreciate you guys having me. Thank you very much.
So there you go, guys. That was Big John McCarthy. Really, really insightful guy and really eloquent. I could listen to him talk for ages.
Yeah, he reads a lot of books, and you could tell from that interview that he retains most of the information that he reads. But a great guy, and definitely somebody who we will have continuously on Submission Radio to really let us know what's going on with the rules in MMA.
Yeah, absolutely. But we're going to cut to our next guest in just a moment. Obviously, somewhat of a local hero here in Australia. Obviously a UFC fighter, and it's going to be great to have a chat to him.
Yeah, that's right. This guy's like the Rocky of Australia. When he runs down the street, people throw him apples. At least people with fruit and vegetable stalls. He fought Mirko Cro Cop at UFC 110. Took the fight on a few days' notice, and also took it in a high weight class that he usually competes in around that time. So he is a man's man, and definitely somebody who the Australians look up to.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, we're going to take a really quick break, and we'll be right back after this with Anthony Perosh.
This is Don Fry, and you're listening to Submission Radio. You touch that dial, and I'll kill you.
All right, guys, our next guest is a UFC fighter. He is in the light heavyweight division, and he is Australia's own. He is none other than the Hippo, Anthony Perosh. Anthony, welcome to Submission Radio. Thanks so much for being on.
No problem, my pleasure.
Yeah, look, it's great to have you on here. Now, I wanted to ask you, obviously, you were originally supposed to be fighting John Vellante at UFC Fight Night 43 in New Zealand. You were going to fight right here next to Australia in our neighbours. What exactly happened, and what made you come off that card?
I just had a bad injury at training. I was doing BJJ training, like in the gi, of all things, and just had the biggest, loudest pop in my knee, and had an MRI that day, and I tore my PCL, which is a ligament in the knee. It's like opposite ACL, which I'm glad I didn't do that one. But tore the PCL, I tore the calf muscle in half, and I tore another muscle called the popliteus behind the knee. So tore three things, and just the knee swelled up to the size of a soccer ball almost.
Wow. And how are you coming along with that injury now? Do you require any kind of surgery, or is it just rehab?
Good. Yeah, good news is with all those three things I tore, I avoided surgery for the time being. So it's been 7 weeks now since I did it, and probably another 5, and I should be 100%. And then when I'm 100%, I'll let the UFC know I'm ready to go, and hopefully fight again September, October this year.
Well, that's great to hear. That's great to hear, Anthony. Now, obviously, it happened while you were doing your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gi training. Does it make you think about training in the future? Any kind of changes that you'd make to sort of avoid a similar injury like that?
No. It happened. It's just one of those things where it happened during a thing I've done 10,000 times before, and just for some reason, it was just the right angle with the right pressure and at the right time. It is just, if I did the same move again 10,000 times, it probably nothing would happen. But it just happens like that sometimes. So, but I'm kind of when it comes to injuries, I avoided surgery, which is a good thing, and it happened like in the very first week of my fight camp. So at least it didn't happen towards the end, which would have been even worse.
Yeah. Now, obviously, you were going to fight, John Vellante. When you do make your comeback, obviously, your last fight was Ryan Bader. Who's someone that you would be targeting, or who's someone that you would like to fight in your next fight?
Look, there's no real name I want to fight at this stage because I'm coming off a loss to Ryan Bader, and I'll just see who's available. At the time, who else is coming off a loss? Because that's kind of how it works. You fight someone around who's ranked around your level, and who else was coming off a loss. So, fighting Jon Vellante, was a good match for me because I was coming off a loss against Bader. He was coming off a loss against Fabio Maldonado, and it would have been a good match for both of us to climb up the ladder again.
And I was going to say, in your last fight against Ryan Bader, I mean, you showed a lot of toughness. Obviously, Ryan Bader, he's known for obviously his wrestling, his knockout power, and there was some parts where you had success on the feet. What would you say the biggest thing is that you learned from that Ryan Bader fight?
Look, he I guess it's to be first because he rocked me first, and Every time I wasn't just trying to survive in that match. I was actually trying to get up and trying to win. But because his pressure was relentless, he never let me get back in the match. So credit to him for that, but also credit to him that he got me first. He rocked me first and had me in trouble, and then from there he never stopped. So, I tell myself and I tell all my students and fighters as well is be first. It doesn't matter if you're competing in MMA or BJJ or kickboxing or whatever. The person who's first, like with that first good combination or good takedown and pass, is going to have a big advantage.
Now, Anthony, we know a lot about your grappling. Obviously, you're an amazing grappler, but tell us a little bit about your striking. Obviously, you've worked a lot on your striking. We've seen some great knockouts from you. Talk to us a little bit about how your striking's coming along, and who do you work with on your striking specifically?
My main striking coach is Steve Riddick. He's my boxing coach. Steve won a bronze medal in the 2006 Commonwealth Games in boxing, and he's my height, my weight. So he's a good training partner as well. So, I've been with him now for, I think, since my first UFC fight as a light heavyweight when I beat Tom Blackledge a few years ago. So, I've been with him for about 4 years now or so. And it's just been great. Like, I liken myself, like in BJJ, it takes about year and a half, 2 years between each colored belt. So it's like 6 to 10 years to get a black belt. So I've only been boxing for about 3-4 years now. So I consider myself like a blue belt level type thing. So basically it's fun. For the first time in my, I guess, MMA career or martial arts career, I enjoy it. I really enjoy striking, and I want to get better at it. And it helps having a coach who can show you things and help you and troubleshoot, and then having great training partners as well, because everyone sees that my students are getting better, sees me getting better, so they want to get better at striking as well. So it's great. For the first time, I'm enjoying the striking and want to get better and keep getting better at it.
And that's good. I mean, I think a lot of, a big part of having a passion on something and getting better at something is obviously enjoying it, and that's what's going to lead you to get better at it. And I know a lot of fighters, they say that even if you're a grappler or a wrestler, once you start knocking some people out, it becomes very addictive. Would you say that that's something that's happened to you?
Oh, look, I found out a few years ago, the only thing that gives you motivation to do anything, it doesn't matter if you want to fight MMA or lose weight or, get your dream job or whatever. The only thing that gives anyone motivation to do anything is results. So when they see results, they want it even more. So, it took me a few years to just get my basics in striking down, but then I had good results last year, and now, I want it even more.
Now, Anthony, let's get into the Submission Radio time machine and go back in time to your UFC debut. It wasn't exactly a small-time debut. It was against one of the greatest fighters in MMA, Mirko Cro Cop, at one of the biggest UFC events here in Australia, UFC 110. We were there to witness your fight. Tell us a little bit about, talk us a little bit about what that fight meant to you, and how you felt when you found out you'd be fighting one of the greatest fighters, in the history of MMA, and you'd be doing it one weight class higher than you actually compete at.
Well, actually, I actually made my UFC debut back in 2006. I fought 2 matches as a heavyweight, so this was like my return. I was winning on the local scene, and had pulled a lot of wins in a row, and I wanted to get back in the UFC, and I was close to getting in there, and probably needed a couple more wins on the local scene. But then, 2 days before the UFC 110, I was just standing in the lobby of the hotel, and Joe Silva comes up to me, and he's the matchmaker in the UFC. He comes up to me and looks me up and down. He goes, "How much do you weigh?" I went, 100 kilos. He goes, "You want to fight?" I went, "Yes, for sure." Like, he didn't even say who, because I thought at that time Elvis was supposed to fight Chris Hazeman. And about a few days ago, Elvis pulled out of that match due to injury. And I thought I was going to step in for him and fight Chris Hazeman. And then all of a sudden, Joe Silva goes, "Oh, you want to fight Cro Cop?" I went, "No." And then, so I actually said no, because Cro Cop was actually training in my gym a couple of times that week as his preparation, as were the 2 other Croatian fighters on the card, because I have my parents are Croatian, so all 3 Croatian fighters. There was Cro Cop, there was Željko Relic, and Igor Pokraev. They were all training at my gym that week. So I was actually, chatting with Cro Cop, and all of a sudden I had this opportunity to fight him. And then I said no. But then about an hour later, I had to think about it. And I just thought to myself, what am I doing? I just turned down fighting one of the best fighters in MMA on pay-per-view in the UFC in front of my home crowd. And straight away, I called Joe Silva back, and I told him exactly that, and got the match.
That's crazy.
And apologies, that's right, you did make your debut in 2006, just the history machine making a mistake there. Now, No, you know, we like to be accurate here on Submission Radio, but what was the reaction from your family, from, you know, your training partners when you called them up and you said, "Oh, hey, I'm fighting Mirko Crow Cup in a couple of days, in a huge pay-per-view fight"?
Oh, look, all of my family, friends, students, and supporters are all ecstatic. You know, there's all. It was great because, you know, they knew how hard I was fighting and training, you know, before that, and wanted to get back in the UFC, and this is what I always wanted, and you know, I got my opportunity.
And obviously, since that day in Sydney, Australia, MMA has really exploded in Australia, and especially Oz MMA. You know, you see new MMA gyms, BJJ schools, people started doing kickboxing again, boxing, everything. What do you think about the MMA boom in Australia?
It's okay. Like, I still would like. I guess the only thing that's missing in Australia is there's no. It's not on TV, you know, or in the newspapers. You know, I'm just so lucky to have people like yourself and your show that supports MMA in Australia, you know, because, like, for example, you know, I beat Vinny last year in 14 seconds at UFC 163, and there wasn't a single line or photo or anything in any newspaper in Sydney. You know, like, it's just disappointing, you know, when you see, you know, 20 pages on another sport and 2 pages is just like, you know, just fluff. It's like, far, you couldn't even like write a line. And so that's really, and it's not that I want to see myself in the headlines. I just want MMA reached out to the general public. My goal is, because at the moment, it's like the MMA fans are just in Australia like true fans. It's not like I walk down the street and everyone knows. It's still only if you're an MMA fan, you know, you'll recognize them. But if you're in America or Brazil, you know, it's on free TV over there. It's in the newspapers. It's in the media, and that's really the only thing missing in Australia, because we've got a whole host of top local shows that fighters can train at. There's a lot of good MMA gyms and coaches and fighters and see that in the UFC now. There's a lot more Australian fighters, and every year I hope it doubles. You know, I hope this year there's a bunch of Aussies, new Aussies, and year after even more. And I just wish that the media would cover it a bit more.
Absolutely agree with you, Anthony. You know, what I've noticed is there's a lot of negative perception in the media about MMA and the UFC, and it's not really perceived in a fair way. Now, me and Casper are coming to you live from Melbourne, Victoria, and it's not even legal in Victoria yet. What are your thoughts on MMA being illegal in Victoria, and what can we do to change that, in your opinion?
Yeah, look, what they have in Victoria and also Western Australia, it's just a ridiculous rule, because MMA is illegal in a cage, in the octagon, but it's legal in a boxing ring. So that rule alone is big to Australia, and it just comes down to, you know, lack of education. And it's just a shame. But look, I think just with time, you know, they will come around and finally see the light, so to speak, and, you know, MMA will become legal all across Australia.
I fully agree with you, and especially what you said before about the media not covering it. I mean, you know, footy's great and soccer's great, and obviously Melbourne being the sporting capital of the world, but, you know, you hear people talking on a Friday, Saturday night about the footy, and it'd be great to one day sort of, you know, hear people talking about, oh, did you watch that fight? Did you watch this fight? You're going to watch the fight on Sunday night?
And people do talk about a fight. Like, I'm a sporting nut. You know, I watch the World matches now. I watch the State of Origin religiously when it was on a few days ago. Like, every time Australia plays, or my favourite, I'm a sporting nut. You know, I just don't, because I'm an MMA fighter. I don't only follow MMA. I follow all the sports, and so do other athletes too. Like so many rugby league players and soccer players, they watch MMA, and they get a lot of messages of support and from them. But because they watch, and I watch other sports, and other fighters watch other sports too. But just for some reason, like you said before, every time MMA is in the media, it's always something negative. And the last time, I think it was on a couple of weeks ago on 60 Minutes or the Sunday current affair program, I think Channel 7, and it showed kids MMA. And that only happens in I think 2 states in America, so it doesn't even happen in Australia. Like 2 states in America, and it showed, and the headline was, "Do you want your kids to do this?" I'm going, whatever.
It's ridiculous, though. You're absolutely right. It's ridiculous. It has nothing to do with Australia or Australian MMA or even MMA in general. And they were on these Indian reserves with no rules, and somehow they try to connect it back to us. It's just unbelievable. Horrible journalism. It is. And the same thing, and then a few months ago, the one punch knockout incidences, and that's a terrible thing. But unfortunately, even worse is that the idiot who did it said, I'm an MMA fighter, and then they straight away put the connection of MMA fighter and violence. It's like, no, it's not how it is.
Yeah, I was going to say that's absolutely right. And I remember when obviously Bigfoot and Mark Hunt had that, crazy fight here, which I think was really good for MMA in general. I mean, the fans loved it, everybody. And you go on news websites and they're talking about how barbaric it is. And it's like, well, guys, the media here in Australia obviously doesn't understand it. And proof of that is the fact that obviously cage fighting is illegal. Meanwhile, a ring where guys can fall out is legal. But I was going to ask you, Anthony, obviously you and Elvis Sinizik, you own Sinizik Perosh Martial Arts, and you guys have been teaching for quite a while now. In America, there are issues where unqualified people are opening gyms and teaching classes. Have you seen anything like this in Australia, or possibly seen people teaching things that don't necessarily work?
Look, anytime something becomes popular, you always get people who want to take shortcuts and try and make a quick buck. But it's happening now here in Australia. But my only recommendation to any students and potential students is just to go and do your due diligence. You've got to go and see who is your coach, and who is the school, and what have they done in terms of coaching, and how long they've been around, and do they have any credentials? Because that's pretty much unfortunately 80% of the people out there, they just see these flashy signs and the flashy things that they can do, and something like train and will make you a good fighter, but they don't even do MMA or nothing. But
I wanted to also ask you, Anthony, at the moment, there aren't too many Aussie fighters in the UFC. I mean, there's obviously yourself, Robert Whittaker, Carl Noakes, Sol Palele, and, Dylan Andrews, to name a few. And then you've got Hector Lombard, Mark Hunt, and Brian Ebersol, who we love and who live here, weren't necessarily born here. Do you think that because MMA is booming here, that hopefully soon we'll see, in the next few years, more UFC fighters coming out of Australia?
Oh, absolutely. It's always slow and hard at first. It might be, one or two fighters from Australia the first couple of years, then it doubles in the next couple of years, and it doubles again the next couple of years. But, like I said earlier in the interview, when Australia sees the results and actually see that there's a lot of UFC fighters from Australia, then, that will give them motivation to make it as well. So rest assured we'll see a lot more Aussies in the UFC in the up and coming years.
Awesome, awesome. Now, Anthony, we're going to do the submission radio tap out round with you in a second. But before we get to the round, I just have a question for you. Obviously, there's a lot of Ultimate Fighter seasons with Australia versus various countries. Just an idea out there. It would be great to see you as a coach, as the Australian coach one season on the Ultimate Fighter. Would you be open to doing something like that?
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, I've just had my 12th year birthday as my first gym opening. I opened up my first gym in May 2002, and I've been a coach now for 12 years and got a lot of good students and fighters, and I've had an enormous amount of success, and they're going to continue to do so. So I'd love to be a coach someday.
Great, great. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do the submission radio tap out round. What it is we're going to throw some questions your way, and you just got to give us the first thing that comes to your mind. So when you're ready, we'll kick it off.
All right, I'm ready.
Okay. Now, Anthony, what are your goals in the UFC before you retire from the sport?
Win as many matches as possible.
All right. Now, Anthony, what exactly what does Anthony Perosh watch after a hard day in the gym?
Movies. I love watching movies.
Anthony, you have to choose an entrance for your next fight. You have to choose one of these three options. So here we go. Option one, the lights go out, fireworks turn on. You come in on top of a hippo, and when you go to the octagon, the hippos go in a little pool near the octagon and watch you fight. Number two, you come in with AC/DC on the back of a demon float with flame coming out. Or number three, you come in a satin robe. Which one do you choose?
What was the last one?
You come in wearing a satin robe. Which one do you choose?
Number two, for sure.
AC/DC, of course.
The hippo's most unprovoked death with humans, so he'll probably kill me on the way out.
You give yourself very little credit, Anthony. You're an UFC fighter. I'm sure you could take the hippo on.
I was going to say, Anthony, also, the name the hippo, what is the background to that?
As you know, my strength is BJJ, and when I started BJJ, I started getting a lot better. A few years into it, I love getting on top and pushing people on top. So a lot of my training partners just started yelling, "Get off me, you big fat hippo!" So it kind of stuck from there.
Now, Anthony, which Australian celebrity do you think would have made the best UFC fighter? We got Bert Newton, Kylie Minogue, or Red Dog?
Who's it, Bert Newton, Kylie Minogue, or Red Dog?
Red Dog. It was an inspirational movie about a dog in a small town of Australia.
If I had to have a choice, maybe Red Dog. Yeah.
Yeah. Take that, Bert Newton. And last of all, what can we expect to see from the hippo next in 2014?
The hippo winning again, having his hand raised and octagon, and getting some good submissions.
Awesome, awesome. Well, we look forward to heaps. Guys, check out Anthony Perosh. He'll be back in the UFC soon. And, of course, check him out on Twitter. Anthony, thank you so much for being on the show. We really appreciate it.
Thanks so much again.
So there you go, guys. The hippo, Anthony Perosh. Can't wait to see him back in the octagon and see him back in action.
Yeah, making hippos look good all over the country and the world. It was great having Anthony on and all the other guests as well. Calvin, one of the young up-and-coming guys in MMA. Really excited to see his fight. And Big John McCarthy, really a pioneer for MMA rules and MMA in general. So, yeah, just a nice little showcase, and it was a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, absolute pleasure having all those guys on. We just want to thank you guys so much for listening. As always, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel. We've got a lot more content coming. And, of course, if you're a person on the go, you can check us out on Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, or iTunes.
That's right, people on the go and people listening at home. Thank you very much for tuning in. We've got a whole lot of stuff coming out on the channel. We've got a whole lot of stuff coming out next week. And let us know your thoughts, your comments, YouTube us, go on Twitter and tweet us, and leave some comments in the comment section below. We love to hear from you guys, and we love to hear any questions or any ideas that you guys have for future shows.
Yeah, guys, anyone who wants to contact us, obviously on our Twitter, Submission AUS, and obviously next week we've got a few big guests lined up, and more information on that will be revealed later on the week. But until then, guys, that's us bowing out for another week. Have a great week, enjoy the fights, and we'll see you next week.